25 things from 1960s. Once necessary, now completely obsolete. The 1960s gave us some of the most iconic inventions of the 20th century. But where did they all go? From gadgets we couldn't live without to household staples now forgotten, these once essential items tell a story of change. Ready for a nostalgic trip? Let's rediscover 25 things from the 60s that time left behind. TV antennas. TV antennas used to be a common sight, especially before cable took over. These big metal structures, often sitting high on rooftops or poles, were how families picked up their favorite TV shows. With just a turn of the dial or flip of a switch, the antenna would catch signals from far-off towers. Whether it was the evening news, a sitcom, or the weekend ball game, that antenna made sure the picture came through, fuzzy or not. Back then, choices were limited, and the antenna was your lifeline to the few channels available. Getting the best signal sometimes meant adjusting the antenna just right, often with someone yelling from the living room, "It's better! No, wait, go back!" It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and it brought people together in front of the screen. Eventually, technology moved on. Cable, satellite, and now streaming services changed everything. Most homes now use sleek digital antennas, or none at all. The old metal ones have mostly disappeared, but they're still remembered fondly. They remind us of a time when watching TV meant a little more effort, a little more patience, and maybe even climbing up on the roof. Be honest, did you ever fight with a sibling over the TV antenna? Glass milk bottles. In the 1960s, glass milk bottles were a familiar sight on just about every front porch. Each morning, the milkman would show up with fresh milk, leaving full bottles and picking up the empties. These bottles weren't just throwaways, they were part of a smart, eco-friendly loop. Families would rinse them out and leave them outside, and the dairy would clean, refill, and reuse them. It was a simple system that cut down on waste long before anyone talked about going green. Glass kept the milk nice and cold, but it had its downsides too. These bottles were bulky and easy to break if you weren't careful. And in the wintertime, the milk could freeze, swell up, and sometimes push the cream right out the top of the cardboard lid. Still, people often say milk just tasted better out of glass. Richer, colder, and fresher than what we get today in plastic. By the end of the century, life had changed. People started shopping at supermarkets, and plastic jugs and paper cartons took over. They were lighter, cheaper, and didn't shatter on the kitchen floor. Party line telephones. Back in the 1960s, party line phones were a big deal, especially out in the country or in small towns where getting a private line just wasn't an option for most folks. Instead of each house having its own phone line, a bunch of homes would share the same one. So if you picked up the phone and heard someone already talking, you had to hang up and wait your turn. That could be really frustrating, especially if there was an emergency. Sure, party lines saved people money, but they also came with headaches. Privacy? Pretty much non-existent. It wasn't unusual for neighbors to listen in on each other's calls, sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose. And gossip? It spread like wildfire. Arguments about who was hogging the phone weren't rare either, especially in houses with a lot of people or between neighbors who needed the phone at the same time. Each house had a unique ring, so you'd know if a call was for you, but that didn't always stop others from picking up just to see who was calling. By the time the century was winding down, private phone lines had become more affordable and widely available. Families were happy to leave party lines behind and enjoy the freedom of a phone line all to themselves. Manual typewriters. This classic machine used a clever combo of keys and metal hammers to press ink onto paper, turning out clean, professional-looking pages. The steady click-clack of typing filled offices and homes alike. It was the background noise of a working day. But using one took skill. There were no do-overs, no backspace, no spell check. If you made a mistake, you had to start over or break out the correction fluid. For many folks, the manual typewriter was more than just a tool. It was a symbol of getting things done. Secretaries, writers, and reporters all leaned on them for letters, articles, and reports. Even at home, people used them for school assignments and heartfelt notes. A good machine had a smooth feel, and each keystroke gave a satisfying snap as it stamped the page. Then came the 1970s, and electric typewriters started popping up, making typing easier with auto-return and softer keys. But once the 90s hit, personal computers and word processors changed everything. With faster typing, editing tools, and digital storage, typewriters slowly disappeared from everyday life. Punch cards. Back when computers were just getting started, punch cards were the main way to store and process data. These stiff paper cards had rows and columns where tiny holes were punched out to represent letters, numbers, or commands. IBM was a big name behind them, so people often called them IBM cards. They were used everywhere, from big companies to universities and government offices, for everything from handling payroll to running scientific experiments. Working with punch cards took a steady hand and a lot of patience. Every card had to be punched perfectly, and one wrong hole could mess up the whole program. For big projects, you'd need boxes full of these cards, sometimes thousands, all sorted in the right order. If you dropped the stack or got them out of sequence, it could take hours to fix the mess and get things running again. By the time the 1970s rolled around, better storage options like magnetic tapes and disk drives came along. These new tools made it faster and easier to enter and pull up data, and punch cards quickly became a thing of the past. Home movie film reels. Back in the 1960s, saving family memories meant pulling out the film reels. Home movies weren't quick snapshots. They were special moments you had to plan for. Families would gather with their Super 8 or 16mm cameras to capture birthdays, vacations, and simple everyday life. The grainy look of the film gave everything a warm, timeless feel. But using those cameras wasn't just point and shoot. You had to load the film just right, and each reel only gave you a few minutes of recording time. After filming, you couldn't watch it right away. You had to send the reel off to be developed, and that often meant waiting days or even weeks. Once it came back, watching it was a big deal. The projector would come out, the lights went off, and the family gathered around to see their memories dance across a blank wall. That soft clicking sound from the projector and the occasional jam were just part of the fun. But film reels weren't easy to keep. They needed cool, dry storage, and projectors had to be kept in working order. Eventually, as technology moved on to VHS, camcorders, and later digital video, film reels faded away into history. What's one thing from the 60s you still secretly use or collect? Transistor radios. Unlike the big, heavy tube radios that came before, transistor radios were small, light, and easy to carry around. They ran on batteries, so folks could take their music with them, whether they were hanging out at the beach, going on a road trip, or just strolling through town. For the first time, radio wasn't stuck in the living room. It was wherever you wanted it to be. Companies like Sony, Zenith, and RCA jumped in fast, making colorful, stylish models that didn't cost a fortune. Teenagers loved them. They'd tune into rock and roll stations like WABC or KFWB and feel like they had their own personal music player. To a lot of kids, that little radio meant freedom. It let them break away from the family radio and listen to whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Transistor radios stayed popular for a good while, but eventually things changed. Cassette players came along, then CDs, and now it's all about digital music and streaming. Still, transistor radios haven't disappeared. They're simple, reliable, and people still use them, especially when the power goes out or during emergencies. Filmstrip projectors. Back in the 1960s, filmstrip projectors were a big part of how we learned in school. You'd find them in classrooms, libraries, and training sessions everywhere. These machines turned regular lessons into visual stories. A film strip was just a long strip of pictures that went frame by frame, usually along with an audio track on a cassette or even an old vinyl record. The teacher would click through each frame in time with the narration, turning it into a step-by-step lesson that really stuck. They were great for subjects like history, science, or language arts. Kids would sit in a darkened classroom while bright, colorful images lit up the screen. It made the material feel alive, way more exciting than just reading from a textbook. Whether it was a folktale with drawings or a space documentary, those film strips pulled you into the story and made learning more fun. Still, these projectors had their downsides. Sometimes the film would jam, the bulb might blow out, and syncing the audio just right took a little practice. As video technology got better, schools slowly moved on to VHS tapes, then DVDs, and eventually digital tools, leaving film strip projectors behind. Slide rules. Before pocket calculators came along, slide rules were the must-have tool for anyone doing serious math. Engineers, scientists, and students all depended on them to handle tough calculations. These clever gadgets used logarithmic scales to make things like multiplication, division, powers, and trigonometry a whole lot easier. You'd slide one part along the other, line things up, and boom, you had your answer. Of course, you still had to know your math to make sense of it all. If you worked in a technical field, knowing how to use a slide rule wasn't optional, it was part of the job. Engineers used them to build everything from bridges to rockets. Even during NASA's Apollo missions, slide rules helped guide astronauts into space. They didn't need power, they didn't break easily, and they fit right in your pocket, making them a trusty sidekick for both students and pros. But once the 1970s rolled around, everything changed. Small electronic calculators hit the scene, offering instant answers with the press of a button. No more sliding or estimating, just punch in the numbers. As they got cheaper, calculators quickly took over and the slide rule faded into history. Kodak Brownie camera. The Kodak Brownie camera, first launched way back in 1900, completely changed how people took pictures. Before that, photography was something only the rich could afford, and it took a lot of gear and know-how. But the Brownie made it simple and cheap. It had a basic box shape, was easy to carry, and came with film already inside. For the first time, regular folks could take their own pictures, family gatherings, vacations, everyday life, without needing to be an expert. This little camera was a game changer. It opened the door for millions of people to start snapping photos and saving memories. You didn't need a studio or fancy equipment anymore. Just point, shoot, and send the film in for developing. It was that easy. The Brownie stayed popular for decades because of how simple and reliable it was. But by the 1980s, things had moved on. Better film cameras and new digital models came along, and the Brownie was retired. Still, its legacy stuck around. It helped shape modern photography and made taking pictures something everyone could do. An idea that lives on in every smartphone and digital camera we use today. Steel ice cube trays. Made from tough stainless steel, these old-school ice cube trays were built to take a beating and keep going. What made them stand out was the lever inside. After filling the tray with water and freezing it, you'd pull that lever, and with a satisfying snap, the ice would break free. That crisp, clink sound as the cubes dropped into a glass or sink was just part of everyday life in the kitchen. These trays weren't just strong, they were dependable. Unlike flimsy plastic ones, they held up for years, but they weren't perfect. If you filled them too full or didn't pull the lever just right, the cubes might crack or stick. Still, once you got the hang of it, they were simple to use, and a lot of folks swore by them. For a long time, they were just one of those things every freezer had. But by the time the 1990s rolled around, silicone trays took over. They were easier to handle, didn't need a lever, and you could just twist them to pop the ice right out. Softer, more flexible, and less likely to break, silicone quickly pushed the old steel trays aside. What was the one gadget you thought was pure magic as a kid? Let's hear your stories. Reel-to-reel tape recorders. Back in the 1960s and 1970s, if you wanted top-notch audio quality, reel-to-reel tape recorders were the way to go. These machines had two big reels, One fed the magnetic tape and the other took it up as the sound played or was recorded. They weren't as compact as cassette tapes that came later, but their sound quality was hard to beat. Musicians, radio stations, and serious music lovers all swore by them for their crisp, full sound. These recorders were especially popular with folks who cared about capturing every detail. Whether it was a live concert, a radio show, or a studio session, reel-to-reel systems delivered rich, lifelike audio. That's why they became the go-to tool for anyone who wanted their recordings to sound just right. But as the years went on, technology moved forward. Smaller, easier-to-use formats like cassette tapes, CDs, and digital files took over. They were cheaper, more convenient, and didn't take up as much space. Still, reel-to-reel machines didn't completely vanish. Today, collectors and die-hard audio fans still treasure them for their warm, analog sound and the important role they played in the history of recorded music. Adding machines. These sturdy machines were made for one job, doing the math, especially when it came to handling money. Adding machines weren't like your average calculator. They were built to take on big tasks like adding long columns of numbers, and they did it with spot-on accuracy. Each time you hit a key, the machine would register the number, and when you totaled it up, you'd hear a bell or a click. Most even printed the results on a paper tape so you had a clear record of the work. Before electronics took over, these machines were must-haves for accountants, office clerks, and store cashiers. In bookkeeping especially, they played a big role in keeping financial records neat and correct. Made from solid mechanical parts, they were built to last. With a little care, one could keep ticking away for decades. And people got used to the satisfying clack-clack sound as the machine crunched the numbers. But once the 1970s and 1980s rolled in, electronic calculators and computers started to take over. They were faster, easier to use, and could do a lot more. By the end of the century, most offices had moved on, and the old adding machine became a thing of the past. Portable phonographs. These elegant machines, often wrapped in polished wood or fine leather, were once the height of audio tech. Portable phonographs let folks bring their favorite tunes just about anywhere. Picnics, family get-togethers, or even outdoor dances. Wherever you went, music could follow. But unlike today's easy digital gadgets, using one took a bit of work. You'd have to set it up, place the record, and sometimes even turn a crank to get the turntable going. Back then, though, it was worth the effort. People loved the warm, rich sound that came from those spinning records. It turned any place into a little celebration. But as time marched on, these machines couldn't keep up. Radios, then cassette players came along and were simpler, smaller, and quicker to use. Eventually, everything went digital. Now we've got Bluetooth speakers and music apps that stream songs in seconds. Today, portable phonographs are mostly memories or collector's items. They had their moment, and for a while they brought joy and music wherever people gathered. But like many great inventions, they were eventually replaced by something newer and easier. Tube televisions. Tube televisions, or CRTS as they were called, used to be the center of every living room. Big and bulky, these box-shaped TVs brought families together for news, shows, and weekend movies. The way they worked was pretty fascinating for the time. Tiny beams of electrons would shoot across the screen, lighting up a picture right before your eyes. The quality wasn't perfect, but for that era, it felt like magic to see moving images in your own home. For decades, CRTs ruled the world of home entertainment. But as tech improved, these trusty sets started to feel outdated. Along came flat-panel TVs, LCDs, LEDs, and OLEDs that changed everything. They were thinner, lighter, showed clearer pictures with brighter colors, and used way less power. Slowly but surely, they took over, and the old tube TVs started disappearing from living rooms across the country. Nowadays, it's rare to spot a CRT in anyone's home. Most folks have upgraded to sleek screens that hang on the wall or sit neatly on a shelf. Still, there's something about those old sets that brings back memories. A bit of nostalgia for a time when flipping through channels was a family affair. Vinyl record cleaners. Vinyl record cleaners used to be a must-have for anyone serious about music. Back when LPs were the main way people listened to their favorite songs, keeping those records clean was key. Whether it was a soft brush, a special cloth, or a bottle of cleaning fluid, these tools helped clear off dust and grime that could mess with the sound. A well-cleaned record didn't just look better, it played smoother with less crackle and fewer skips, letting the rich, warm sound of vinyl really shine through. For true audiophiles, cleaning records was part of the ritual. It protected the grooves, preserved the sound, and kept the music experience top-notch. But over time, things started to shift. Digital music took over, first with CDs, then with downloads, and now with streaming. It was easier, faster, and didn't require any cleaning at all. Let's settle this. Was vinyl really better, or are we just feeling nostalgic? Home barometers. Home barometers, often framed in polished wood and glass, used to be a common sight in houses during the 19th and early 20th centuries. These elegant tools weren't just for show, they helped families keep an eye on the weather. By tracking changes in air pressure, the barometer's needle would shift, giving a good clue about what kind of weather was on the way. If it dropped, rain or a storm might be coming. If it rose, clear skies were likely ahead. It was like having a little weatherman right there on your wall. For generations, people relied on barometers to plan their days, especially in areas where the weather could change quickly. But as time went on, technology made things easier. Radar, satellites, and computer models started doing the job better and faster. Eventually, you didn't need a barometer to know if you should carry an umbrella. These days, most folks get their forecast from the TV, radio, or right on their phones. While barometers still exist, they've become more of a decorative piece or collector's item than a household necessity. Phone books. Not too long ago, phone books were a must-have in every household. These thick, heavy books were packed with names, addresses, and phone numbers of just about everyone in town. Once a year, a fresh copy would land on your doorstep, and it instantly became your go-to source for finding people or local businesses. Need a plumber? Looking up an old friend? You'd flip through the pages and find exactly what you needed. For many, the phone book wasn't just useful, it stirred up memories too. Spotting a familiar name often brought back thoughts of neighbors, classmates, or long-lost relatives. But times have changed. With smartphones, the internet, and digital contact lists, searching for a number now takes just seconds. No more flipping pages or squinting at tiny print. Just type a name and there it is. Because of that, phone books have slowly faded away. What was once a household staple is now mostly a memory, replaced by faster, smarter tools that fit in the palm of your hand. Did your family have any of these at home? Sewing patterns. Sewing patterns used to be a big deal, especially in the mid-20th century. Back then, they were the secret to making your own stylish clothes right at home. These patterns came printed on delicate tissue paper or thin cardboard and included step-by-step instructions and helpful diagrams. Whether you were a seasoned pro or just getting started, patterns made it possible to create beautiful, custom garments from scratch. In the 1960s, sewing patterns opened the door to fashionable, well-fitted outfits that matched the trends of the time. You'd find everything from sharp pencil skirts to chic A-line dresses and classic jackets. Each design reflected the era: mod looks, sleek evening gowns, and that famous shift dress. People loved putting their own spin on these pieces, choosing their own fabric, adding embroidery, or tweaking the cut to make it truly theirs. For many, it wasn't just about clothes, it was about creativity and self-expression. But things changed. As the fashion world moved forward, ready-to-wear clothing became more accessible and affordable. Technology brought in digital tools, and fewer people had the time or need to sew at home. Still, vintage patterns haven't disappeared. Collectors, designers, and nostalgic crafters still cherish them as a link to a time when making something by hand meant style, care, and pride in every stitch. Carousel slide projectors. The Carousel slide projector used to be a favorite way for families to relive memories together. First introduced by Kodak in 1961, this clever invention featured a rotating tray called a carousel that could hold dozens of slides at once. Each slide had to be loaded upside down and backwards, but once in place, the whole show ran smoothly. Instead of stopping to change every single slide by hand, the projector advanced them automatically with just the push of a button. Before this came along, viewing slides was a slow and fussy job. You had to load each one individually, adjust it, and then do it all over again for the next. Kodak's Carousel changed that, making it easy to flip through a whole reel of photos without constantly fiddling with the machine. It was perfect for family events where proud parents could show off vacation shots or birthday memories while everyone gathered around in a darkened room. But like many great inventions, the Carousel projector eventually lost its place. As digital cameras, smartphones, and screens took over, people no longer needed physical slides or bulky machines to share their photos. What was once a treasured part of family gatherings has become a nostalgic piece of history, remembered fondly but replaced by faster, simpler ways to relive the past. Zippered pencil cases for slide rules. Zippered pencil cases for slide rules were once a must-have for students, engineers, and scientists in the mid-1900s. Back then, when slide rules were the go-to tool for doing calculations, keeping them safe and organized was a top priority. These zippered cases were built tough and designed to carry more than just the slide rule. They kept everything neat and protected so nothing got lost or damaged. Inside, there were compartments for pencils, erasers, and even drafting tools, with some cases including a special slot just for the slide rule itself. That way, it wouldn't get scratched or bent. The cases had a clean, professional look that matched the serious work being done. For folks dealing with complex math and technical drawings, these cases weren't just handy, they were part of the job. Digital alarm clocks. Back in the day, digital alarm clocks were a must-have on every nightstand. They made sure you got up on time for work, school, or anything important. With their bright, easy-to-read numbers and sleek designs, they blended right into the bedroom decor. Some even came with bonus features like built-in radios or dual alarms, giving you more control over how and when you woke up. They were simple, dependable, and for a long time, they were the best way to stay on schedule. But then came smartphones. Suddenly, people had an alarm, clock, calendar, and music player all in one. That shift changed everything. More and more folks started using their phones to wake up, check the time, and plan their day. As a result, digital alarm clocks slowly began to disappear. While a few people still keep one around as a backup or just out of habit, most now lean on their phones. Which of these forgotten treasures do you remember? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this stroll down memory lane, check out the rest of our series. Don't forget to subscribe and share Past Not Past with someone who loves a good dose of nostalgia. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.